Distinguished guests by the Chairman of the Prospect Foundation, Dr. Chen Tangshan, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Lin Jialong. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us today at the Prospect Foundation, Dr. Chen Tangshan, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Lin Jialong. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us today at the Catalan Forum 2025 Indo-Pacific Security Dialogue. Welcome. Once again, thank you all for joining us today in the Catalan Forum 2025 Indo-Pacific Security Dialogue. Please take a seat. Welcome. Thank you so much once again for joining us today in the opening ceremony of the Catalan Forum 2025 Indo-Pacific Security Dialogue. Welcome. Thank you. Once again, we'd like to thank you, His Excellency, Mr. President赖清德, for joining us this morning in the opening ceremony of the Catalan Forum 2025 Indo-Pacific Security Dialogue. Joining us today, we also have the Chairman of the Prospect Foundation, Dr. Chen Tangshan, and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Lin Jialong. Thank you all for joining us. Please take a seat. Welcome. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Catalan Forum 2025 Indo-Pacific Security Dialogue, hosted by the Prospect Foundation and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, MOFA. To begin, I'd like to invite the Chairman of the Prospect Foundation, Dr. Chen Tangshan, to deliver his opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Chen Tangshan. Welcome. Chairman, this way. Welcome. Welcome, Dr. Chen, for your opening remarks. Please.
Good morning, Honorable President Lai Ching-te, Right Honorable Prime Minister Johnson, Mr. Lin Jialong, and Secretary General Wu Zhaoxie, Mr. Upe Radu Kanaso, President of the National Assembly, the Rui, Ukrainian parliamentary delegations, Premier Kennedy, and all distinguished guests, good morning. We are very, very happy to welcome all of you to this year's凯达格兰Forum. As we have done over the year, we gather here today in Taiwan's capital, Taipei here, to address some of the greatest challenges of our time. As wars old and new, ranging across continents, and as new iterations of threats increase risks to our security, I'm sure it's very essential that we take stock of this state of opportunity of our world, and just as important, that we look for solutions. This is crucial to ensuring a prosperous and secure future for humanity and for the preservation of the values that define us and the countries that we represent here today or in this hall. It warrants repeating that as the global security environment becomes increasingly complex, Taiwan is a frontline nation. In all the issues that we will be discussed today, Taiwan is a target. This is very important that we keep in our mind. It is a target. I say Taiwan is a target because of its geographical location and because of its the significance of its geopolitical importance. And also it is a great target because I believe it's a democracy, because Taiwan is a democracy, so it's a target. Consequently, Taiwan can also and must also play a role in finding the solutions that we need collectively to meet the challenges head on. But now this one can be accomplished by one state alone. However, and that is why we have here today with us a great number of distinguished guests and leaders in their respective fields. Three key topics will be featured in today's discussions. Number one, the geopolitical security landscape in the Indo-Pacific. And number two, countering hybrid warfare and strengthening whole of society defense resilience. And number three, the impacts of economic, technological, and industrial diplomacy on international politics. So those are three important topics we'll be discussing today. We understand our is a really rapid changing world, and the vigorous of time and politics compels us to be on the lookout for new threats, new responses, and of course, new opportunities. In order to do this, we need to clearly identify our opponents, the means by which they seek to undermine and defeat us, and the ways by which we can respond, we can mitigate and counter these threats. So from the threat, we understand from this threat of traditional warfare to the use of new technologies, and from the threshold of conventional war to the dislocations of rapid economic transformation and technological advances. So this is a world that faces us today. if we put our minds together, I believe, as we are doing today here, and with a shared sense of mission, I'm quite confident that we can learn important lessons from all this and come up with a series of best practices that will allow us to prevail in what to many may seem like to say that impossible task. And maybe like in dark times, but I believe we can penetrate through and we can do it. So I want to, on behalf of the Prospect Foundations and all our staff members and the friends from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, everybody here, to thank you again for being with us today. And I wish you all a day of enlightenment, constructive exchanges of ideas, and most importantly, renewed friendships. So once again, thank you very much for coming to this very important, meaningful meeting. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the remarks, Chairman Dr. Chen Tangshan. Thank you. Please return to your seat. Thank you very much. Once again, we'd like to thank Dr. Chen Tangshan for his opening remarks, such powerful and inspiring speech. Thank you very much. Please return to your seat. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's our great privilege and distinct honor to have His Excellency Mr. President赖清德to address the opening ceremony of凱達格蘭Forum 2025 Indo-Pacific Security Dialogue. Now, please join me in welcoming His Excellency Mr. President赖清德for his remarks. Welcome. Welcome.
Prospect Foundation Chairman Chen Tangshan, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, Minister of Foreign Affairs Lin Jialong, former French National Assembly President François de Rugy, experts and scholars from around the world, all the distinguished guests here today, good morning.
Good morning.
This year marks the 9th year of the凯達格蘭Forum. Over the years, this key platform has brought together government leaders, experts, and scholars from around the world for dialogue on all aspects of Indo-Pacific security. On behalf of the people of Taiwan, I sincerely welcome you all and thank you for joining us. This year's forum centers on 3 major themes: Indo-Pacific regional security, whole of society defense strategies in democratic countries, and the strategic integration of economic, technological, and industrial diplomacy. These themes are all closely linked with Taiwan's national development. I'm confident that this year's forum will enable Taiwan and democratic partners from around the world to achieve even greater consensus on ways we can work together for a more secure Indo-Pacific and more prosperous world. Over the past year, the international landscape has become more and more volatile. The Russia-Ukraine war is still ongoing, and conflict in the Middle East has only intensified. Meanwhile, China's military activities in the Taiwan Strait and East and South China Seas pose unprecedented challenges to rules-based international order. As authoritarianism continues to expand, democratic nations must join even closer in solidarity to defend our values. Taiwan holds a key position on the fourth island chain, making us a keystone of Indo-Pacific peace and stability. In view of this, we have been moving forward with the 4 pillars of Peace Action Plan since I took office. This includes boosting our national defense, building economic security, demonstrating stable and principled cross-strait leadership, and promoting values-based diplomacy. Our government remains committed to maintaining the status quo and ensuring peace and stability across Taiwan Strait. At the same time, we will deepen partnerships with other democratic nations to advance global prosperity and development. Taiwan is also taking the initiative to enhance our whole of society defense and resilience. This July, we introduced National Solidarity Month. This combines our yearly Hanguang military exercises with new urban resilience drills. The initiative expanded civil participation, and through military-civilian cooperation, helped verify the resilience of government agencies and people throughout the nation to address extreme situations. Alongside these efforts, we are continuing to reform and invest even more resources in our national defense. Next year's defense budget will reach a target of over 3% of GDP to boost Taiwan's self-defense capabilities. Taiwan will also continue to enhance its economic resilience and steadily advance its economic security, while we further deepen our economic and trade cooperation with other countries. We will keep upgrading our 5 trusted industry sectors of semiconductors, artificial intelligence, military, security and surveillance, and next-gen communications. A nation's strength and its democratic footing are grounded firmly in its economy. I'm confident that if democracies can join hands in creating more robust, more resilient global democratic supply chains, we can spur even more economic prosperity and further consolidate our democracy. To all dear friends of Taiwan, in this turbulent global landscape, Taiwan stands on the front lines of authoritarian threat, which is also the forefront of the global defense of democracy. Thus, we know how precious peace is. And we recognize that peace in the Taiwan Strait is not just a regional issue, but a shared responsibility for economic stability and security around the world. As a responsible member of the international community, Taiwan will stand with the world's democracies to face challenges, uphold the rules-based international order, defend peace through strength, and protect our hard-earned, free, and democratic way of life. Once again, thank you for participating in this dialogue and for standing with Taiwan. I wish you all lively and productive discussions today and a great stay in Taiwan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President Lai, for addressing the opening ceremony. And due to the scheduling considerations, Mr. President has to depart from the forum. Ladies and gentlemen, please once again join me for a round of applause to thank His Excellency, Mr. President Lai Ching-te, for joining us this morning. Thank you very much. Many thanks to Mr. President Lai Ching-te and all our distinguished guests for gracing the opening ceremony of the Katagalan Forum 2025 Indo-Pacific Security Dialogue with all of your presence. Thank you so much for joining us today. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please thank all our guests here today. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for joining us and giving us an opening speech. Thank you very much. Please once again thank Mr. President and all our guests here today. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our first keynote speech will begin shortly in about 10 minutes, and we will now take a short break. And in 10 minutes, we will resume our forum, so please remain seated during this time. If you need to step out, please be sure to return to your seat by 9:40 a.m. as we will begin promptly. Thank you very much. Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our next session will begin in about 5 minutes. I'd like to invite you to please take your seats and silence your mobile devices. Our next session will begin in about 5 minutes. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is about to begin shortly. I'd like to invite all of you to please take a seat immediately. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Our next session is about to begin shortly. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our opening keynote speech is about to begin. I'd like to invite all of you to please take your seats and silence your mobile devices. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I'd like to invite all of you to please take your seats as our next session is about to begin. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite all of you once again to please take your seat as our next session is about to begin. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the forum, and please join me in giving a warm round of applause to welcome our morning keynote speaker, the Right Honorable Boris Johnson, and our host, Ambassador François Wu Zhizhong, Deputy of the MOFA Taiwan, to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a big round of applause. Welcome. Please welcome the Right Honorable Boris Johnson to the stage, and please take a seat, and also welcome our host, Ambassador François Wu Zhizhong. Welcome. Please.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, 各位女士先生 ，Good morning, bonjour, 大家早安。On behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Taiwan, it is an honor and a privilege to welcome you all this year's凱達格蘭Forum Indo-Pacific Security Dialogue. Today, we are especially proud to host a figure whose presence speaks volumes about the importance of shared democratic value and the deepening bonds between free societies. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, the Right Honorable Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. This occasion marks Monsieur Johnson's first visit to Taiwan. We are delighted to welcome him in a spirit of friendship and sincere respect. Mr. Johnson served as a UK Prime Minister from 2019 to 2022, a time of extraordinary global turbulence and transformation. His premiership was characterized by an unwavering conviction in the power of democracy to stand united in the face of threat, be they political, economic, or military. Under Mr. Johnson's leadership, the United Kingdom took whole steps to reposition itself globally, most notably through the 2021 Integrated Review, which heralded Britain's strategic tilt toward the Indo-Pacific. This reorientation acknowledged the region's growing importance to worldwide peace and prosperity, and it paved the way for deeper cooperation with like-minded democracy, including Taiwan. In particular, when the United Kingdom held the G7 presidency during Mr. Johnson's term in 2021, the G7 leaders communique for the first time explicitly underscore the importance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. This marked a collective sharpening of the G7 focus on Indo-Pacific affairs and represented a meaningful expression of support for Taiwan's security and international presence. Taiwan deeply appreciated Mr. Johnson's commitment to upholding democratic value and his role in fostering a more inclusive and rule-based international order. Mr. Johnson has never shied away from speaking truth to power. He has been one of the clearest and the most consistent voices in Europe in support of Taiwan's democracy and in calling attention to rising tension across the Taiwan Strait. His stance has underscored the importance of maintaining peace, stability, and the freedom of navigation in this vital region, and has contributed significantly to international awareness and resolve. At the same time, Mr. Johnson has played a leading role on the global stage in responding to Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine. During his premiership, the United Kingdom moved swiftly to implement strong sanctions against Moscow, provide robust military and humanitarian aid to Kiev, and a ready international partner in defense of the principle of sovereignty and international law. His leadership on this issue demonstrated a profound commitment to collective security and democratic resilience. But Mr. Johnson is more than a leader of consequence. He is also a powerful and persuasive communicator. His ability to link strategic vision with human values and to speak candidly in defense of liberty makes his voice a particularly vital one in today's increasingly contested world. As Taiwan continues to work with a global partner to safeguard peace in the Indo-Pacific and uphold the rules-based international order, we are honored to count Mr. Johnson as a friend and a supporter of Taiwan cause. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, 各位女士先生, please join me in extending a very, very warm welcome to our distinguished keynote speaker, the Right Honorable Boris Johnson.
Thank you, Deputy Minister Wu. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Right Honorable Boris Johnson for his speech. Welcome.
Well, Minister Wu, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, the longest and most enthusiastic introduction I've had for a very long time. Li Ho, everybody.
Ni hao.
Very, very good to see you. And Mr. Chairman of the Prospect Foundation, Monsieur le Président de l'Assemblée Nationale, ministers, colleagues, friends, Ukrainian friends who are here, thank you for this invitation. It's wonderful to be here in Taiwan at last, because until yesterday, I had only seen this country on my lockdown Peloton machine, which had a screen on the handlebars, giving me the illusion that I was cycling on the coastal path of Taiwan. And so for day after day, I was up on the top floor of number 10 Downing Street, puffing away on my exercise bike and watching the rain-slicked tarmac of Taiwan spool away in front of me. And I believed I was on this magic island. And I noticed how beautiful it is. And I also noticed, by the way, how sheer, how vertical the cliffs are and how difficult to attack, which is a point I think that deserves to be more widely noted. But I couldn't see any people. and I couldn't see the culture, and there were no clues as to Taiwanese society, except it all seemed very clean and very well organized. And it was irritating because I wanted to find out about the incredible Taiwanese triumph, which I believe will be in the key technology of the 21st century. And so I've come here really as a pilgrim and as an admirer from a distance of Taiwan, and as a total believer in AI and an addict of ChatGPT. And look, I don't mind if ChatGPT occasionally makes things up or gets things wrong, because it's so polite and so good for my ego. And imagine having a little friend who tells you every day, you had a brilliant and original idea. You're so clever, says ChatGPT. Me love you long time, says ChatGPT. And it's all free. It's absolutely fantastic. And far from fearing the future, I look forward to the day when artificial intelligence goes through the protected bourgeois professions like a whirlwind of fire, torching the ridiculous, time-consuming, and don't you agree? Time-consuming, expensive nonsense conveyancing, planning applications, way leaves, all this legal stuff. All this stuff that's been used to hold people like me to ransom for generations. And look, I mean, don't worry, all the people who do these jobs, you know, the accountants, lawyers, and so forth, they're going to get other jobs. It's going to be fine, because great technological change always ends up creating more well-paid jobs than it destroys. And we will solve the problem of social care workers, the shortage of social care workers, which we have in our country, not with more immigrants, but with, I think, eventually ChatGPT. ChatGPT androids, reminding the elderly to take their pills in a tirelessly polite and deferential manner. AI is going to help humanity in millions of ways that we can only guess at right now. It's the biggest advance in cognitive power I've seen in my lifetime. It has the potential to be bigger than the internet, bigger than Gutenberg, bigger than print itself. And all of it is made possible by Taiwan, isn't it? It's true. As I'm sure you all know, about 95%, perhaps even 100% now, of the sophisticated microprocessors that are necessary for AI are made here through the genius of Taiwanese manufacturers' atomic-level precision in lithography and etching. I remember when I first became Prime Minister of the UK in 2019, I said, look, you know, I was aware of this thing. I said, look, we've got to catch up with Taiwan. We can't lag behind. I said, I said to my officials, how much would it cost for us to build a fabrication plant here in the UK? And they said £9 billion to begin with. I thought, that seemed quite a lot. But I said, okay, right. And then they said, but even if we could do it on a reasonable timescale, we could not guarantee that our chips would be as good as Taiwan's, because year after year, the Taiwanese are getting better and better. And year after year, these Taiwanese chips put new distance between themselves and their competitors. And so, of course, I gave up the idea of the UK government trying to compete with you. And I've come here because I know that there is a fundamental reason why this miracle is taking place on this island and nowhere else in the world, or at any rate, a unique combination of factors. There's a strategic vision of the Taiwanese government. We just heard just now from President Lai, the companies themselves, who are driven by constant desire to improve. But then there's the whole commercial environment of Taiwan, the spirit that you notice as soon as you get here, which you can't detect on your number 10 peloton, as I say. And it seems to me that there is a zing and an energy and an optimism here, because this is a free country where everyone has the equal protection of the law, where you don't have to worry that someone is going to steal your intellectual property because you have security of IP. and where you don't have to bribe some party apparatchik to get a contract, because on the whole, corruption here is very low. And that freedom, under the law, gives people tremendous confidence to invest and to take risks, commercial risks, that they might not otherwise take, and therefore to innovate. And I think that is why Taiwan leads the world in what is currently the world's most important technology. And so, of course, it follows that it's vital, not just for Taiwan, but for the West, for my country, for the whole world, that we protect that freedom here in Taiwan. Because I think I can safely say after 24 hours that we have a miracle here in this country. A Chinese country of 24 million people, where the population feels free, feels different, and feels a strong sense of Taiwanese identity. And as far as I understand things, the majority of people do not, on the whole, want to declare that they are immediately a sovereign state independent of Beijing. Have I got that right? That seems to be the general, or a view of a large number of people, because they're aware of the sensitivities on the mainland. All they want, as we've heard from the President earlier on, all they want is to protect the status quo, to protect democratic self-government and the freedom that is at least partly responsible, I believe, for your success. And the sad thing about what is happening now is that it is not the people of Taiwan who are demanding unilateral constitutional change, is it? On the contrary, it's Beijing that is insisting without the slightest evidence that the current arrangements are somehow unsatisfactory. And every day, we see it on our TV screens. The People's Republic of China is trying to bully Taiwan into submission. And the PRC is sending boats into Taiwanese waters and planes into Taiwanese airspace, as if to remind the world, as though we needed reminding, of the might of the Chinese armed forces, and thereby signaling their intention by 2027, we're told, which is not very far away at all, to impose Chinese communist rule on this island, to eradicate democracy, to impose unification, and basically to run the place from Beijing. And they are signaling, and they've said expressly, that if necessary, they are willing to use force. And of course, around the world, people look at the relative size of the two entities, population size, Taiwan versus the People's Republic of China, 24 million versus 1.3 billion, or whatever it is. And they wonder how Taiwan could possibly survive in such a struggle. I mean, around the world they do. I don't think they worry about it here, do they? Do you think Taiwan, let me ask you seriously, do you think Taiwan can survive? Do you think this blessed island, this happy accident of history, can keep its free and democratic status? Do you? Yes. Good. Well, I'm here to assure you that I also believe that Taiwan can and Taiwan will, because it's plain to me that freedom is what the people of Taiwan want. And in the phrase of John Stuart Mill, you are lovers of your own liberty. And I don't believe that spirit will ever be crushed. And I say, therefore, to our friends in Beijing, and they should be our friends, by the way, that is a huge mistake to use intimidating and aggressive measures against Taiwan. And that publicly to contemplate violence is madness. Because the minute you use force to make a unilateral change to the status quo, you risk a chain of events that you cannot control, because that is, I'm afraid, what war always means. And we know, of course, that there are currently ambiguities in the official US position, the official British position, about what we would all do in the event of an attack on Taiwan. And that is for the very good reason that no one wants to get drawn into a discussion about a set of circumstances that we all passionately hope to avoid. But you also know, because you've seen it at this conference and previous versions of this conference, that there are already powerful, distinguished American politicians who are willing to speak up for the defense of Taiwan. And you know that there are many in Washington who are absolutely determined to prevent what America fears would be a major change in the balance of power in the Asia-Pacific region and in the configuration of the political configuration of the first island chain. Washington is passionately against that. And by the way, we all know that the United States has the ability, the sheer kinetic power, to change the course of any war on the planet. And I know, we know, in my country, that if America did get engaged in some operation, then the chances are that they would ask for assistance from their closest partners, their AUKUS partners, for instance, France too, I have no doubt, Britain, Australia, and others. And you'll have heard the other day what our Defence Secretary, our Labour Defence Secretary, John Healey, said about the natural instinct of Britain to help its friends and allies. Now, I don't think he was talking about any particular scenario or how in particular Britain or any other European country would react. Because the truth is, right now, we don't know how it would look, how it would feel, what the occasion would demand from the Western powers. We're uncertain. And that is the whole point. That is how disasters begin. It is far easier to start a war than to predict how it will go. And you only have to go back 3 years to see how an active war can trigger consequences that are entirely unforeseen and unintended. And there are clear differences between Taiwan and Ukraine. Analogies are not always accurate. But there are some lessons that can certainly be drawn. And when Putin invaded Ukraine in February 2022, he did not expect that by now Russia would have sustained 1 million casualties with 250,000 dead, did he? He didn't bargain for that. He didn't expect that after the colossal expense of Russian blood and treasure, he would still only control about 18% of Ukraine. Slavo-Ukrainian, by the way. Slavo-Ukraine. He never expected that the Ukrainians would resist so heroically, or that they would receive such steadfast and generous Western support, started, by the way, by President Trump when he gave the Javelin missiles. The war has been appalling for the poor and blameless people of Ukraine. It's been a disaster for the world. It has also been a total catastrophe for Putin. He will go down in history, not as the man who reunited the two most important parts of the former Soviet Union, not as the man who brought Ukraine back under Moscow's control. He will be remembered as the man who, by his arrogance and impatience, created in the hearts of Ukrainians an absolutely inextinguishable national feeling and desire for independence. Putin is not the man who restored Russian pride. He is the man who gambled on violence and lost, and believe me, he is going to lose. And I think in the Trump White House, the scales have now fallen from their eyes about Putin. And there is a real possibility that in just a couple of days, I think August the 8th, isn't it? Those countries, third countries that have been enabling Putin's war by buying his hydrocarbons, India and China, will be hit hard by secondary sanctions. And of course, I don't think any of those countries imagined for a second when this war began that they might in time be visited by that kind of punishment. And I dwell on the lesson of Ukraine, not because the comparison is perfect. Clearly, there are important differences. But to make this basic point that if you trigger violence, then you are firing a Sarajevo pistol that can lead to disaster for you and for the entire world. And so that's why it's so vital that we address this problem in a way that I think the people of Taiwan want. We heard it just now from the President. It's vital that we address it in the way that I think the people of Britain want and the world want. And that is to have peaceful dialogue across the Straits of Taiwan. And I think, we can be totally respectful, but we should ask our colleagues in Beijing to explain just why is it so essential to you to conquer Taiwan? When this island presents no conceivable threat to the mainland, is it really worth the risk? Is it really worth the risk, Beijing, when the consequences for the whole world could be so dire? And by the way, is it really necessary for every segment of the Chinese population to be ruled by the Chinese Communist Party? Can there not be places, beautiful places, that are differently Chinese? Of course there can. I think, by the way, it's a fantastic, I think it's an advantage for Beijing to have this innovative society, this society is incredibly fertile in technological developments right next door, investing massively, by the way, in China. And at the same time, we say to our Taiwanese friends, and the purpose of my mission here today, we say to our Taiwanese friends, we're with you. We stand with you because you are, as has been said, in the front line of the struggle against autocracies. We're with you for strategic reasons, because no one wants the chaos, confusion, and uncertainty that would follow such a change in the balance of the power. No one around the world wants that. No one wants war. And certainly no one wants Chinese domination of the first island chain. We're also with you, quite frankly, for economic reasons, aren't we? For your vital role in global supply chains, not least, as I say, in microprocessors. And all I can say in conclusion is that as China intensifies its pressure on Taiwan, I hope that we all, the West, America, the UK, all the Europeans, will have the courage not to tiptoe away, not to be cowed by our desire to be deferential to Beijing, but to stand with Taiwan and to deepen our economic partnership. That's what we need to do right now as the pressure intensifies on Taiwan. And last night, I can tell you, I've had a wonderful time in Taiwan so far. Last night, I went out to a restaurant called Din Tai Fung, I think. It was absolutely rammed with people, and they were eating more different and more complicated types of dumplings than I've ever seen in my life. It was a sort of temple to dumplings, this place. It was devoted to the cult of the dumpling. And I met a guy there last night, and I'd met him before because actually, about 6 years ago, I helped to open the first Din Tai Fung. Have I got that right? Yeah. I happened to open the first Din Tai Fung in London, and they got me to make some dumplings very unsuccessfully. And I am thrilled to say that since then, there are now 3 such Din Tai Fungs in London, and Taiwanese influence is spreading the whole time. And UK-Taiwan trade, you should know, I am proud to say, is growing, and growing fast. £9 billion this year. Financial services, Johnny Walker, obviously seems to be very important. I noticed all sorts of different colour Johnny Walker, indigo label, mauve label. I don't know, I've never tasted any of these drinks, but they seem to be very popular here in Taiwan. Obviously very good for the Scottish economy. And we should intensify that economic partnership. And we are. I'm very pleased that the UK office here is well staffed and highly active. And in the end, folks, we're with you for the best reason of all, which is that we share your values. UK, Taiwan, we're two island democracies who understand that freedom is not just a wonderful thing because it helps you build a better silicon chip. Obviously it does, and Taiwan is the proof of that, right? I've made that argument. We're with you because we both understand that freedom is also a wonderful thing in principle, and it's a wonderful thing in itself. So thank you, Taiwan. Thank you for your bravery and for standing up for freedom in a very difficult and dangerous part of the world. You will have our support, and let us stand up for freedom together. Thank you all very, very much for having me at your conference today. Thank you.
Thank you. Many thanks to the Right Honorable Boris Johnson for his inspiring and powerful speech. Mr. Johnson, please depart from your right-hand side. Thank you very much. Let us give him a round of applause once again as we thank him for his steadfast support and bid him farewell for his departure. Thank you. Mr. Johnson's unwavering commitment to the values of freedom and democracy and his enduring friendship with Taiwan are sincerely valued and will long be remembered. And once again, I'd like to also thank Deputy Minister Wu for hosting and presenting introductory remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now take a short break. Our next session, the panel discussion 1, will begin at 10:30. Please return to your seat promptly before 10:30 and allow us to start the next session timely. And we have some refreshments and beverages prepared outside of the hall for you. And please be reminded to keep your valuables with you at all times. Thank you and see you later. Ladies and gentlemen, our next session will begin in 3 minutes. May I invite all of you to please take your seats. Thank you. Our next session will begin shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is about to begin shortly. I'd like to invite all of you to please take your seats. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, panel discussion 1 will begin shortly. I'd like to invite all of you to please take your seats. Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the forum. And now we will proceed to a panel discussion titled New Geopolitical Security Landscapes in the Indo-Pacific. There are 5 panelists in this session, respectively from Canada, the Philippines, India, Japan, and Taiwan. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to welcome our moderator of panel 1, Dr. Lai Yizhong, the president of the Prospect Foundation. Welcome, Dr. Lai. And now I give the floor over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, and welcome all of you to the first session of this year's凱達格蘭Forum. After hearing the exciting speech by our president and also the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, I believe that all of you will be excited about what will come out in this session. This session is about the new geopolitical security landscape in the Indo-Pacific. Of course, we know that the Indo-Pacific is about 3/5 of the world population and 2/3 of world trade. But in addition to that, the war in Ukraine 3 years ago integrates the European theater and Indo-Pacific security environment altogether. But in addition to those integrations, in the past years, the Chinese aggressiveness, as well as U.S. policy changes since year 2017, also fundamentally changed the security development and environment for the Indo-Pacific as well. But I think that this is not just about the U.S.-China competition in the Indo-Pacific. But the country in this region react would also play a very significant role. So you can see that in these first sessions, for the first time, usually when we talk about security, we always have a United American here at the podium. But this time, probably for the first time that we do not have any Americans here. But that is intended because we want to highlight the agency of the country in these regions, so that we have 5 distinguished panelists. They all have a very distinguished career in their belt. The first one to speak will be Dr. Gloria Jumanmel Mercado. She's a chairperson and chief executive officer of the Asian Center for Excellence in Development and Security in Philippines. Of course, she also is a seasoned career bureaucrat, have very extensive experience working at the Philippine National Security Councils as a senior undersecretary for the education, among other positions. And then she'll be followed by Dr. Raya Mohan, Distinguished Fellow, Council for Strategic and Defense Research, Delhi, India. And Dr. Raya Mohan is a very well security and strategic writer in his field, not only in India, but also in Indo-Pacific. I'm a big fan of his writing. Every month, he publishes a ISAS in the Singapore think tank. I'm an avid reader for that publications. So the tip of my hat to him. And then the third one will be Dr. Tomohiko Taniguchi. Especially he's specifically appointed as professor of University of Tsukuba, Japan. But I think the other experience that the Dr. Tomohiko Taniguchi carried is that he's a special policy advisor to former Prime Minister Abe Shinzo. Various Abe Shinzo's, his very important speech, including the confluence of 2 Cs, and among others, for the Indo-Pacific strategy, is actually under Dr. Taniguchi Tomohiko's writings. And then the next, it will be very own from Taiwan, Dr. Chen Mumin. He's just appointed as ambassador of Taiwan to India, and actually he was about to depart today, but for this specific event, he delayed his arrival to India for 1 day, so that he will depart tomorrow. So we are really glad to have him. And then last one but not least is Honorable Jason Kenney from Canada, 18th Premier of the Alberta, and he is also former Canadian Defense Minister. So we'll speak in this order, and each one will have 10 minutes. So Dr. Gloria, please.
Good morning, Chairman Chen, and thank you for the introduction of everyone here. So distinguished colleagues, esteemed delegates of this forum, and fellow security professionals, I'd like to greet the Chief of Mission of the Manila Economic and Cultural Office, who's also an alumni of the National Defense College. Good morning. It is both an honor and a privilege to speak to you today on the theme of resilience and relevance, 2 words that capture not just a mindset, but a national imperative for the Philippines. The Indo-Pacific has emerged as the center of the 21st century geopolitics, an expansive and complex region where economic dynamism, military rivalry, and strategic uncertainty collide. As a frontline state, the Philippines finds increasingly at the heart of this contest. With its strategic location astride the South China Sea and the Western Pacific, its democratic credentials, and its security alliances, the Philippines is uniquely positioned to both contribute to and be impacted by the evolving geopolitical and security landscape of the Indo-Pacific. It is transitioning from a loose geographic label to a contested strategic construct. While the term has gained currency among like-minded states, it also highlights a deepening rivalry between the United States and China, alongside the growing assertiveness of middle powers. In the dynamic context, the country faces increasing pressure to define its position not merely in terms of alignment, but in terms of principle and strategic agency. The Philippines is an active participant, seeking a careful balance between deterrence and diplomacy, sovereignty and cooperation. Geographically, the Philippine maritime domain includes some of the most strategically significant waters in the world. The South China Sea, where the country asserts sovereign rights within its exclusive economic zone, remains an epicenter of regional tension. Our maritime geography, with over 7,600 islands, 36,000 kilometers of coastline, and rich archipelagic sea lanes, is our source of leverage. It sits at the vortex of Indo-Pacific, and our position in the first island chain, adjacent to key maritime choke points, makes us a pivotal actor in both strategic deterrence and regional stability. As a frontline state in the region defined by strategic contestation and emerging fault lines, the Philippines is inclined to lead and collaborate. Leadership must be anchored in principled pragmatism, informed foresight, and strategic empathy, values that recognizes the enduring power of geography, the volatility of geopolitics, and the promise of shared security. The Philippines must therefore develop its own comprehensive maritime strategy that integrates diplomacy, security, and blue economy, investing in a maritime infrastructure, enhancing our Coast Guard capabilities, and asserting our rights through sustained legal and diplomatic mechanism will define whether we remain active or proactive. Our security architecture is evolving. The Mutual Defense Treaty, Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, and joint exercises in Balkatan with the United States and allied countries reflect enduring alliances. But what we are building now is not deeper than just interoperability and mutual preparedness, but also strategic resilience. Even with expanded EDCA, it should strengthen also other engagement with countries like Australia, Japan, and South Korea, as it demonstrates a new kind of strategic geometry, a flexible, layered deterrence ecosystem, and transcends binary alignments. We are witnessing emergence of multilateral architectures, the Quad, AUKUS, IPEF, in response to an eroding multilateral order. The evolution demands clarity of purpose and depth of partnership. Amidst this evolving defense architecture, our ASEAN centrality is being tested. The very principles of non-interference and consensus, once diplomatic strength, now risk becoming liabilities. The delayed code of conduct is symptomatic of deeper inertia. If ASEAN is to remain central, it must also be courageous, reforming not to appease, but to assert. In the shifting landscape, UNCLOS must remain our compass, a legal framework and strategic shield. The Philippines must push for regional UNCLOS 2.0 dialogue. This includes creating enforcement mechanism, shared surveillance, and a tribunal that can act on non-compliance. We must also embed UNCLOS education in our legal and diplomatic core, a national curriculum. Development is security, and security is development. The Philippines must be a bridge nation, principled, not neutral, sovereign, not submissive. Our foreign policy must be values-driven, issues-based, and unapologetically Filipino. To that end, we propose 5 key paths. Mutual defense agreement like Sea Vision in the Pacific, Partnership for Maritime Domain Awareness, regional disaster resilience hubs, and Cebu and Davao, critical infrastructure, foreign equity restriction must be updated with cybersecurity in mind, and push for rotational ASEAN Security Council for eminent persons to fast-track reform. In sum, security in the framework of Indo-Pacific is not just about survival. It is about who we are and what we choose to stand for. When history places us in the crossroad, let our people and this region find us as a source of principled strength and quiet courage. After all, in the age of uncertainty, as whether we are from small or big country, we must all be both a shield and a bridge. Therefore, for the Philippines, it should be resilient and relevance within the Indo-Pacific framework. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you, Dr. Gloria Mercado, for your statement. I think at the end of your speech, we talk about the security is not just about survival, it's about who we are and what we choose to sign for. That's quite important. So with that in mind, next I'd like to invite Dr. Ramohan for your comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I can maintain the discipline speaker who finished on time. So let me begin by thanking Prospect Foundation for inviting me for this important meeting. And we gather at a time when most of the world's major contradictions are today converging in Taiwan. As President Lai and Prime Minister Johnson pointed out, the shifting great power relations, the contestation on technology, and the changing dynamics of alliances, all are going to be playing out in and around Taiwan. So it's really, for me, it's a privilege to be part of this debate. So let me just make three broad points in my presentation. First, I think all of us are trying to cope with a profound change in the US strategic orientation. For nearly 3 decades, I mean, at least since the Bush administration, the second Bush administration, there was a certain direction of US policy towards Asia, moving incrementally towards seeking more balance and more security in Asia, and a willingness to deal with China on the basis of reality that we've been used to, whether you called it pivot to Asia, whether you called it Indo-Pacific, but the direction was one of clarity in terms of how US was going to behave. But I think that has changed definitively in the last year or so, I mean, under the Trump administration. Now, Trump 1 actually was the one that reinvented the Indo-Pacific, invented the Quad, and set a foundation for actually dealing with the balance of power in Asia on a pragmatic terms. But at this point, we're not really clear how that is going to play out. So I think for this, we got to recognize that the US domestic politics on trade alliances has fundamentally changed. So it is not something we can control. It is something we have to deal with because there's no way we can alter the domestic dynamics within the US. And I think those of us out in Asia will have to find ways of managing the consequences rather than merely complaining or objecting to what the US is doing, which also means we need to pay a lot more attention to the US domestic politics and how on trade, alliances, and technology are going to play out in the coming years. The second, I think, is the idea that, look, all of us know as realists, there can be no balance of power in Asia without American military presence. The question is, that is, how do we keep America in order to ensure that the Asian balance of power remains reasonably stable? And I think here, the answer to that is that we need to do more in order for the arguments about allies being free riders, or that the US taxpayer is not going to forever pay the burden of American defense. And I think that point resonates in the US domestic politics. Therefore, for us, we need to devise strategies that will help deal with this problem. And I think that is a central question. Same on trade, that the US, now we are told by the Trump administration officials, the US was willing to be a sink for global exports in the Cold War. Today it is saying it's not going to be. And in fact, it's using its dependence, the rest of the world's dependence on American market, to force the changing the terms of trade. That again is a reality. And I think the challenge for us is how do we adapt to this new dynamic that has emerged in the United States. So I think this is both on trade and defense and on alliances. We are in a new domain that needs to be done. What we've seen in the last few weeks, both Europe and Asia, on the trade question, have sought to accommodate the American demands on changing dealing with the new tariff structure. But I think we're just at the beginning of this process, because the costs of readjusting to an American market that's going to charge more for the exports of Asia, on which we've been dependent for so long, will be hard, will have domestic economic and political consequences. So I don't think we should underestimate the consequences of what Trump is doing, of restructuring, of rearranging the global trading order. So I think this is going to be a huge challenge for most of us, because when it comes to we got used to a type of America which is open to taking our exports, to one of dealing with the US, which is demanding a lot more in return for accepting the rest of the world's imports. So this, my sense is going to be quite significant, because how we deal with it will have domestic consequences. The third aspect, I would say, is on the question of alliances. Now, those of you who've been in Shangri-La dialogue, we saw the US now talk about moving from even 2%, 3%, 3.5%. Now, this notion that countries of Asia can simply adapt to these new demands of defense budgeting internally is, again, raising money is about taxation. And taxation is always a painful process in domestic politics of most democracies. So therefore, to meet the US demands in terms of a higher defense expenditure, while nobody is going to challenge the argument, we see the problems of actually dealing with it are going to grow. So therefore, for us, I think simply accommodating American demands is going to be problematic for most countries, including the closest partners of Japan, like Japan, who have actually tried to raise the defense expenditure in the last few years. And most Asian countries have raised this, but I think the kind of scale and the demand that is being set is going to be pretty hard to manage. Therefore, where do we go from here? My own sense is at least two things must stand out. One, we need to do more with ourselves. That is, while we need to keep America in, we also need to do more with each other within the region. So that's partly doing more ourselves at the national level, and doing more with each other will help create conditions for keeping America in on a new set of terms. Without that effort and merely hoping things will go back to the pre-Trump era, I think would be a mistake. So therefore, I think we all have, as the moderator of this panel, I think, said, we all have agency, and I think the idea that we can leave it to the Americans to deal with the problems, and we don't have to do very much. I think that attitude has to change. The second, I think, challenge we have to deal with is, given the massive asymmetry in power between China and the EU and China's neighbors in Asia, that asymmetry is not going to disappear. the scale and intensity of the Chinese military power, which in turn means we have to develop asymmetric strategies of our own in the military domain. How do we develop capabilities, technologies that actually can counter a Chinese brute supremacy that exists? And that, I think, is very, very important for us. I think this is a conversation. I think it's not going to be done overnight, but all of us in different ways will have to configure ways of actually dealing with this asymmetry of the Chinese dominance by asymmetric strategies of our own. And history of international warfare is replete with examples of asymmetric warfare. So the most powerful guy doesn't always win, provided the weaker party has interesting solutions to the problem. And finally, I would say that since we can't change American politics, we must wait out to see how this plays out, which means actually we need to engage a lot more with American domestic politics, dealing with different constituencies. America by design is not for consensus. There are multiple actors, multiple forces. How these play out in the next year or two remains to be seen. Therefore, I think for us, important to focus on greater engagement with the US domestic politics and its different institutions, because there are new actors, new elites that have come to the fore in the US. Getting to know them better and engaging them over the longer term is very, very important. Finally, I would say the contradictions between China and the US are not going to disappear. How much the current policies might be, that contradiction is not going to disappear. So is the contradiction between China and its neighbors. An assertive China has consequences for its neighbors. Unless something big happens within China, that tension between China's assertiveness and its neighbors is going to be inevitable. And I think these two contradictions between China and the United States, between China and its neighbors, is not going to disappear. The question is, how do we prepare to deal with the next phase in the evolution of these two contradictions? I'll stop here, Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan, for your statement. I think that you particularly highlight about the reason why the current U.S. policy toward other nations in terms of tariff, because there are the fundamental economic readjustment that needs to be made. So we appreciate for that important highlights. So next, I'd like to invite Dr. Taniguchi, Tomiko Taniguchi, for your comments. Yeah.
We are with you, Boris Johnson told us, with his uncombed hair, permanent public boy style. It's hard to dislike him. July 8th, 3 years ago, 2022, Prime Minister Abe got shot and died. The next plan that he had was to come to this country, Taiwan. And I'm sure he would have delivered a powerful speech to the Taiwanese audience. And I would have written that speech. Had he delivered a speech, he would have said very much similar to what Boris Johnson just told us a moment ago, that we are with you, the Japanese are with you. But he would have said it differently. We must be with you. We will have to be with you. The Japanese will continue to have to be with you. It is inevitable. Why? Because never before has the security of Taiwan so closely linked to that of Japan. Never before have the waters in the South China Sea, East China Sea, around Japan, been this much contested. And the next 10, 15 years will be a very much important window space of time in which there must be heightened cooperation, collaboration among like-minded democratic nations. Three of us are very much important: the Philippines, India, and Japan. I echo Dr. Rajamohan has just said. There must be intensified coordinations among democratic maritime nations. I can share some of the positive developments that I see of late. One, Indo-Filipino naval collaboration. That's just hit today's newspaper headlines. Also today, I hear something very much positive. For the first time ever, the Japanese naval boat, I think, is going to be adopted by a Royal Australian Navy. That is going to seal the quasi-alliance that's been taking place for some time between Canberra and Tokyo. To confront the behemoth next door hurts. It is painful, which is why there must be constant dialogues, constant collaborations, and even more military-to-military collaborations among those nations. Dr. Rajamohan also said that it is imperative for all of us to maintain the presence of the US military forces. May I tell you, the most important key player to make it happen is your northern neighbor. That's Japan. Because Japan hosts, as you all know, the biggest military footprint of the United States outside its mainland. If you lose Taiwan, the United States will automatically lose almost everything. From Misawa up north, which is an Air Force base, Yokosuka, that is the biggest naval port, that home ports one of the biggest aircraft carrier battle force, Sasebo, and Kadena, Okinawa. Forces stationed in those places will lose strategic value if you lose Taiwan's territorial waters and airspace. So, the late Prime Minister Abe, before he passed away, mentioned a number of times crisis in Taiwan automatically invites Japan and the United States to get engaged, and we must be prepared for that. 10 years ago, the Japanese government under Abe enacted a law without massive oppositions from the protesters, which enabled the country, Japan, for the first time to work as a unit, cohesive unit with its alliance partners, notably the United States, thinking that when the United States will get engaged, the Japanese will have to be there side by side. Since that time, the framework has been broadened to include other alliance partners, the Philippines, Australia, India. Such is a framework that's been in place, and we've got to continue to invest in that framework by, once again, working together all the time for the next 10, 15 years. Xi Jinping has his own biological clock. So he will get even more frustrated going forward. And he will find it even more imperative for China to annex Taiwan. They say Taiwan is part of China. But Taiwanese identity is something else. Just as Japanese identity has been quite different from what the Chinese want the Japanese to be. We've been a proud nation. The Japanese have always been proud, just as an outlier of Chinese civilization. We're proud to be an outlier. And I think the same thing can be made, to a lesser degree perhaps, about Taiwan. Now, one final note. In 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, Tokyo is going to host HMS Prince of Wales and its strike force. That's one of the 2 newly commissioned modern aircraft carriers, and the British government has made it clear that the dispatch of the squadron is going to be regularized. In such a way, we could send a continued powerful signal to Beijing, and we must, that your so-called Chinese dream will cost a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Taniguchi, for your statement. I think that when you mentioned about the former Prime Minister Abe Shinzo, his speech, all of us vividly remember exactly 4 years ago, December, the Prime Minister Abe Shinzo, he talks about Taiwan rise up. So that still reckon and resonate with a lot of people here. So thank you for your comments. And then next, I'd like to invite Ambassador Chen Mumin for your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. We know凱達格蘭 Forum is the biggest conference in Taiwan, talking about security and strategic issues. And this is the 9th year. I also have the honor to attend most of forums in the past years. One of the biggest topic every year that particularly in the first session, when we talk about the regional security strategic development, the biggest issue is China. From the first time to today, it's always about China. And I believe of course, all the audience here today are experts on security issues of the region. And some of you, probably this is your first time come to Taiwan. And you're probably curious how Taiwan think about China. Yeah. I would say that in the past decades, we've been watching the development of China, particularly since China's economic reform of early 1980s. It was a tremendous success. And Taiwan began having trade and exchanges with China since the 1990s. And Taiwan also benefit a lot. Even today, the trade and also people-to-people exchanges between both sides still there. But the biggest change of China, I think, this is my personal view, is that when Xi Jinping came to power, 2012, and then in next few years, he shows more ambition and now become like a national goal that earlier, for Chinese leaders and also for the Chinese society, they think that unification, it is possible, but they can wait. But after Xi Jinping became the leader, he changed the whole course. And in Taiwan, we began to hear this term, forceful unification. So what we saw around Taiwan, this military exercise around Taiwan, and all these diplomatic or military pressure on Taiwan, is because of the whole idea that China right now is thinking they might force Taiwan into submission with the military, or in a more forceful ways. So this is what I call a Taiwan challenge. And of course, we know that Taiwan is a young democracy, and Taiwan is also a very successful technology island. We make great contribution to the world economy and also technology innovations. But because of this challenge, from our neighbor, so we always have to think about how to make Taiwan safe, how to protect our dignity, and how to by preserving the security of the Taiwan Strait, that we could make contribution to the region. But in Taiwan, we also have problems that probably make it difficult for us to make Taiwan a very strong and a solid entity. Because not everyone in Taiwan believes that we should have a very strong position on China. Even today, both sides, Taiwan and China, we still have a direct flight, 300 flights per week. And the last year, we still have about 3 million of people between both sides visits. And so when the government of Taiwan, when the society of Taiwan was thinking that how to defend ourselves and how we can prevent that the penetration of these Chinese authoritarian ideas into Taiwanese society. And because of the intensive exchanges between both sides, make it extremely difficult. So for any government on Taiwan to protect our dignity, it's a big, big challenge. That how you can, convince the people that what we are doing right now is important, and what we could do to enhance our military capability, to improve our society resilience is critical. It's very, very important, but also difficult to convince all the people. But fortunately, I think that the external environment also changes in the past few years. The countries, some of our neighbors, including Japan, and also in the past 2-3 years, we could also see the Philippines. They also share more concerns about Taiwan security. So we could see that there are more exchanges and also cooperation between both sides. The purpose is to create and also to enhance a more security environment in the region. And on the other hand, I think that Taiwan also want to send a message to the whole world that what Taiwan can do to make our world safer. And the purpose for Taiwan, of course, is to defend ourselves, but also to try to find a way that how we could watch China closely. And because we know that China is a political system, that Xi Jinping as a leader, and that he and the whole society authoritarian, it's not natural. That China's economy is in recession in the past few years. So how we could see China closely and prevent China from becoming more unstable is very, very important. So I think what I want to say in the end is first we have to cooperate to make a more a security environment in the Taiwan Strait and also in the Indo-Pacific. And second, we have to watch China closely and prevent all kinds of scenarios to watch out what China and Xi Jinping and also Chinese government, in the future. And third, I think that the most important thing is that Taiwan has to continue preserving and also protecting our democracy. This is, I think, the most important thing. That even Taiwan share a lot of things with China, cultural history, language. But I think that Taiwan, we still have our own dignity, and we have our own identity. This is something we have to try our best to preserve. Yeah. Okay, so I'll stop here, and so later maybe we will have more discussion on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Chen Mumin, for your comments. Now, next, I'd like to invite Defense Minister Jason Kenney for your comment. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Very happy. Is one of the most outspoken supporters of Taiwan in Canadian politics for 30 years. Very happy and proud to be here to say that Canada is sometimes an afterthought in these discussions about Indo-Pacific security and strategy, but I think that we're on the cusp of changing that. I think that Canada is waking out of its naivete about the nature of the Beijing regime and maybe moving towards playing a much larger role economically and strategically in this region. Maybe a little context here. In 1970, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, Justin's dad, recognized the People's Republic of China. I think was the second major Western country to do so. And ever since then, until recently, the Canadian political and economic elites had a very close and at times almost incestuous relationship with senior PRC, Politburo level leadership, which I think compromised our objectivity in looking at the broader Indo-Pacific region. In fact, in the 1970s, we had a massive strategic rupture with the country that I think is our natural anchor alliance in Asia, which is India, over nuclearization of weaponization of nuclear technology. And most of our commercial and diplomatic efforts were focused on the PRC very early on. That started to change under Prime Minister Harper between 2005 and 2015, the government in which I played a role. But even then, I had a cabinet colleague who was our Minister of Foreign Affairs who, in his first day in office, having been briefed by his officials, referred to the PRC as a Canadian ally. And Justin Trudeau, who just thankfully left after a decade in office, once said that his most preferred country in the world after Canada was, quotes, the basic dictatorship of China. He went on to explain it's because it's a dictatorship that they can do big things like build windmills and solar panels. So that kind of, I don't know, naivete and cynicism, the same, a strange toxic combination of naivete and cynicism, led to a kind of blindness about the stakes that Taiwan, Japan, Philippines, and other countries in this region are facing, given Xi's increasing aggression, his aggressive posture. But things have begun to change. You know, I think first of all, I attribute the change to Trump in his first administration, his disruption of the post-WTO accession consensus around the notion that China had to be the center of global trade. And I think Trump basically, he said the emperor had no clothes and forced a rethink across the developed West about the failure of our shared efforts to get a balanced trading relationship and strategic relationship with China. So I think that opened up the floodgates for a lot of the skeptics to speak more loudly. Secondly, it became, when that started, when that reflection began, people saw that Canada, like the United States, like I think Europe, have been huge losers in the post-WTO accession China trade relationship, thanks in part to grossly deliberate, unfair trading practices, currency manipulation, industrial espionage, copyright violation, the total lack of judicial recourse in China, etc. And so that began to change the debate in Canada. Thirdly, we had a series of leaks from our security and intelligence agencies about very serious and aggressive PRC efforts to destabilize and interfere in Canadian domestic politics. Most of this obviously done through the United Front Work Department. Like in Australia and some other countries, they've actually set up de facto police stations in Canada to police the mainland diaspora population, which is growing in size. And many of the mainland diaspora organizations in Canada have been under huge influence, funding pressure, et cetera, and intimidation tactics to become defenders of the agenda of the PRC. And this has created a huge scandal in Canada, led to a judicial inquiry, and we are still feeling the consequences. Then, you may recall that, that Canada, based on U.S. Extradition application, detained Madame Meng, who is the daughter of the CEO of Huawei, which led to a huge diplomatic fight with the PRC, including the indefinite, the detention for, I think it was 3 years, of a Canadian diplomatic, Canadian citizen. Many other Canadian citizens have basically been imprisoned in China, we think, arbitrarily, and many other things. Of course, Canada has actually suffered more deaths per capita than the United States as a result of the fentanyl crisis, almost all of the constituent elements of which have been produced in and shipped out of the PRC. So all of that has meant that the same political and commercial elites who were the amen corner for the PRC have lost face and have now been marginalized, and there is a new consensus. And I'm pleased to say that in some modest but meaningful ways, that's been expressed in Canada, greater cooperation, technical and other cooperation with Taiwan. I'm very proud as a former defense minister and the son of a former Canadian Navy officer to say the Royal Canadian Navy has now deployed destroyers to do several voyages through the Taiwan Strait, some of them unescorted, and there is growing technical cooperation to come in security areas. Now, as I intimated, normally there have been huge efforts to kind of pivot to India as a natural kind of new anchor for Canadian relations in the region, not to diminish our important relations with Japan, Philippines, and other countries. But that too has been complicated, as Mohanji knows, because of matters that we hope to get past soon, with Prime Minister Carney having invited Narendra Modi to the G7 summit in Alberta. Let me say that you're going to see Canada playing a larger role in defense. Now, Trump has been a hugely, as Mohanji articulated, the ways in which Trump has been such a game-changing figure in the strategic context. That is very true for Canada. I come from the Conservative Party, which had a 25% point lead in the polls for election this March, which we ended up losing because of President Trump's threats to annex Canada, if you can believe. We don't quite take those quite as seriously as President Xi's threats to annex Taiwan, but they were very disruptive nevertheless. And he seems to have focused on Canada as, for some reason, as a particular target in his new trade arrangements. So for my friends here who are all facing, I think, 25% tariffs, don't feel too bad. We have a 35% tariff from the US. But one of the advantages of this Trump disruptiveness has been forcing Canada to finally get serious about national security. We played a hugely oversized role in the first two world wars. We exited the Second War with one of the largest militaries in the world, and we carried 1/5 of the burden on D-Day. But we have taken far more than our share of the post-Cold War peace dividend. But thanks in part to the pressure from Trump, we are finally moving our defense expenditure from 1.3% to 2% of GDP, and with a commitment to go to 5%. Part of that involves a huge rebuild of the Canadian military. 60 new destroyers being built. We're probably on the cusp of an order for 12 new modern submarines, and much more to come. And the Canadian defense strategy and our Indo-Pacific strategy underscore Indo-Pacific security, the security of the global shipping lines in this region, and the Canadian Indo-Pacific strategy actually mentions Taiwan in a positive light in several instances. And so, and then finally, let me say that we're never going to be a military superpower, but we are a superpower in energy and natural resources. We have the third largest oil reserves in the world, the third largest natural gas reserves, the second largest uranium deposits, by far the largest potash and therefore fertilizer deposits, and we have the entire spectrum of rare earth and critical minerals. Now, we have had very serious challenges at developing a lot of those resources and getting them to market, which is kind of like the central domestic political issue in Canada right now. But I think Prime Minister Carty, who comes from a different party than me, is going to break through those barriers through rapid and dramatic deregulation. And if that happens, we can be an alternative source for the United States, for Australia, for our Indo-Pacific partners on critical minerals and on energy. Finally, Professor, you asked us to comment on whether domestic politics is affecting any of these things. And I would say, coming back to the malignant work of the PRC's agents in Canada, that the efforts to pivot away from a Canadian policy focused on Beijing are complicated by their interference in our domestic politics. And finally, let me say that when we talk about the Indo-Pacific, we should not imagine that Europe is on a different planet. I think Prime Minister Johnson was exactly right. And I believe that the single most powerful thing that Western countries can do to preclude Chinese aggression in this region is to demonstrate that Putin's aggression in Ukraine will not succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment, Honorable Jason Kenney. And then now we open to the Q&A. So if you have questions, please raise your hand so that I can identify you. And please, when you ask questions, please identify yourself as well as who you want them to answer. Okay? And before we begin, I'd like to lay out my question first. This issue is about how you're going to see your personal assessment about the Chinese actions. We do know that the Chinese economy in the past, after the COVID, is actually going down. And it's continued decline. We do not see any sign of showing the vitalities coming back soon. But also, on top of that, is about the top leadership, political leadership, as well as military leadership, the continued purging of those. Some people suggest that probably something is coming within China. But let's talk about how each of your countries are feeling about the Chinese action toward yours, whether those developments has affected their action toward yours, and how your country assess, also react to the possible development within China. I do know that the Ambassador Chen Muming already put your assessment regarding China. So I'm just laid out this question to an offer of from the Philippines, India, Japan, and Canada. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not going to respond to the question focused on China alone, but I see three great things that are forthcoming in the horizon. One is the possible change in Chinese leadership. Second is, should there be an aggressive move for Taiwan? And third is the forthcoming election of the Philippines in 2028. So while there are challenges, internal challenges in China right now, even a change of leadership would mean continuous assertion of regional aggressiveness. And that's going to be very impactful for the Philippines, because that would mean we have to continue to put up with all the water cannons and occupation of some of our islands. But the Philippines would always respond within the context of law, within the context of collaboration with other countries, and also within what is allowed international order. Second is that we cannot be just a bystander in the event that China would invade or be aggressive with Taiwan, for the simple reason that anything that happens in Taiwan would actually affect the Philippines. Number one, we have 200,000 Filipinos in Taiwan, and 160,000 of them are overseas Filipino workers. Other than that, 46% of our semiconductors and ICTs are linked to Taiwan. So it has big implications, not only economically, but also are very deep people-to-people relations. And our election would have also strong implications in Indo-Pacific, considering that we have strong contenders for 2028 that are considered to be pro-China. And so we are worried that should those personalities win in the 2028, there's going to be a pivot back to China. So our elections has been marred. The midterm election has been marred by disinformation and even an attack on our Commission of Election. So we have seen that the digital space has been weaponized already. So there are so many things that we need to consider insofar as what our government and what our people should do in the forthcoming days. So with that, I would like to say that it's a lot of big work, not only for the Philippines, but for all other countries who believe that the Philippines can be a model of how it stand up to all the coercions through cooperations and rule of law. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger?
I agree with Chung that, look, China's economy slowed down. But here is the problem. I mean, at close to $20 trillion, with the domination of the global manufacturing sector, I don't know exactly 35% of what, and monopolies on critical tech sectors. So China's capacity to bargain with the US, even a confrontational US, its capacity to put economic pressure on the other countries will remain for a long term. So therefore, how do we survive the interdependence with China while reducing it over a period? I think that's a big policy challenge for most of us, and I think that problem is going to be enduring for a long time to come. The second, I think, is the Chinese, for us at least in India, though India has stood up, we still have about 50,000 troops at 17,000 feet facing China. But the fact is, Chinese military power is growing. And for us in India in particular, we saw in the case of the recent India's conflict with Pakistan, that their supply of weapons to Pakistan, their ability to, shall we say, undermine India in its own neighborhood remains strong. And as long as China's economic power and military power grow, that capacities will increase. So therefore, again, we come back to the point of military strategies, asymmetric military strategies. The third point is, I think Chinese capacity to intervene in the domestic politics of its neighbors. For a long time, our American liberal friends said, look, Chinese talk about non-intervention, it's such a stupid thing. So now we are seeing Chinese ability to intervene, which is a serious consequence. And my sense is that Chinese interventions in the neighboring countries have increased in pursuit of political objectives, economic objectives, all across its vast frontier. But so the challenge for us is, with the US that has taken aggressive bullying on economic issues, there are factions in all of our countries which in any case argue it's worthless fighting with the Chinese. Why are we fighting with the Chinese? Let's be good neighbors. We don't want to choose, which is again a common refrain. That strand of opinion, which I think in India at least, because of our conflicts with China, had declined. Now I think those who say, look, you can't trust the US, you have to find a way to accommodate China, I think those sentiments will grow. And that takes us back to the importance of managing US-India-China, US relationship with China's neighbors once again becomes central. But in the interim, how do we work through the disruptive America and aggressive China, the consequences for our domestic polities? That's a reality in all the countries.
Thank you. And Dr. Taniguchi.
I will not say much. One point that I should like to point out is that there must be an innovative way to collaborate among three militaries, the Filipino, Taiwanese, and Japanese. You may or may not be aware, there has been absolutely no interaction, no collaboration, no cooperation between the Taiwanese military and the Japanese. We must be more innovative. And to be innovative takes courage, boldness. And it is very much important for us, the Filipinos, the Taiwanese, and the Japanese, to have the kind of political leadership that can stand tall, no matter how intimidating and bullish the Chinese are. But pragmatically speaking, the fact that there's no dialogue, collaboration between the Taiwanese military and the Japanese concerns me very much.
Okay, thank you. And Honorable Jason Kenney, you would like to say something?
Give me a question again.
About the Chinese, the Chinese economy, the problems they are facing right now, as well as the political and the military leadership bridging that's also going on. How would Canada assess those developments, and would those actions in China affect the Chinese action toward Canada?
Well, they have. Look, they've been imposing all sorts of arbitrary sanctions on us for political reasons, and we've been sort of collateral damage, if you will, in the U.S.-China trade disputes. But my own view is that there is a fundamental weakness in the regime. We've all known this for a long time. I think it's coming to a head, and I'm by no means an unmitigated fan of President Trump, but I think he deserves great credit for having identified the strategic threat posed by Xi's leadership. And I hope the Americans in these trade negotiations with the PRC and the potential imposition of secondary tariffs for PRC's cooperation with Putin, I hope the Americans don't lose heart. I'm a little concerned that there are some of the kind of Wall Street types in the administration, Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick, whose primary constituency is Wall Street and the bond markets, who desperately want economic peace with China. But I hope the president follows his instincts on this and keeps up the pressure. And I think that will accelerate the very deep internal economic problems that the PRC is facing.
Thank you. You want to say something, Ambassador?
Yeah, because I just spoke 8 minutes. I have 2 more minutes too. No, I think the one advantage of being Taiwanese is here in Taiwan, we could watch China closely and knowing the real situation. Recently, I talked to a company boss, a Taiwanese company who invests in China for decades, and I asked him the current situation. He said that he continue his company's operation in China, but he will not increase investment. He said he will stay in China as long as he could continue making profits, but he knows there's a risk if he get deeper in China, so he will not increase any investment. I think that that explains why in the past few years you see that Taiwanese investment in China decreased, but Taiwanese trade with China continue. Okay, but in the long term, I think that China is still in recession. This is a very, very important signal, to us. But on the other hand, if you look at China's leadership, and whether Xi Jinping and the CCP is in a very strong and solid position, I think so far still yes. So this makes this regime extremely dangerous, because when they have domestic economic problem, but on the other hand, they try to maintain a very strong and a solid, a rule in the society. This will make them more aggressive. Yeah. But so far, I think that most of countries in this region, I mean in Asia, they consider the current strategic situation as a strategic rivalry between China and the US. And particularly for small countries, they don't want to take risk. As long as they can benefit from doing business with China and the US, they will continue to maintain relations with both sides. But Taiwan has no choice. Taiwan has no option. What Taiwan can do? Of course, that we still do business with China, but China is never our friend. Yeah, and the US, we know that this current situation. That is why I didn't say earlier, but right now I want to say I hope that particular countries like India could play a more important role, in enhancing the security situation in the region. And of course, Japan already do. Yeah, but the other big powers, particularly India, I think is more important.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador. And I think that with the Trump tariff that's about to impose on a lot of countries, the economic relationship with China definitely will be changed. So that is a new factor we have to factor in. That hasn't really hit anybody yet. So yes, I'm sorry for only left about the 22 minutes for people to ask questions, but please don't be shy that raise your hand so that I can see you. All right, I saw several hands. There are these hands here from the gentleman, also the hands there. So these two, please.
Jason Chen of Formosa Republican Association. I have a question for Mr. Taniguchi. You mentioned your concern in your last comment. I would like to know if you have any suggestion to overcome your concern and make improvements of the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. This is Domingo Yang from NDSR. I have a question for Professor Taniguchi. Thank you, sir, for your wonderful remarks. I think it is reported that the US government, Bridge Kobe, has requested Japan and Australia to clarify their roles and responsibilities during Taiwan contingency. I wonder what is your observations about what are the more constructive ways for the middle powers in this region to really talk about this question of contingency planning and to really push forward this agenda by bringing Taiwan's participation. If military drills are too sensitive, what about defense industry? What about information sharing and the whole of society resilience so that we can work collaboratively about this contingency planning? Thank you.
Thank you. We also have another gentleman, I think he's from Ukraine, right?
Indeed. Sviatoslav Yurash, youngest member of parliament of Ukraine. My question is about different flashpoints in Indo-Pacific region. The whole world was watching with the Cambodia-Thailand border conflict in recent weeks, but I'm very keen to hear your opinions about other potential flashpoints. As we have seen, for example, the Korean question, and we've seen North Korean soldiers deployed in the Russian effort to take over our country. We know of countless civil wars that are spilling from Myanmar into different countries all around it. We are the situation with the Philippines and constant encroachment by China on the territories they claim in South China Sea. We are remembering the fact that China is claiming the whole region of India, Arunachal Pradesh, not to mention the fact that these claims are yet to be relinquished by Republic of China in Taiwan itself. So I'm very keen to hear your opinions on other flashpoints in the Indo-Pacific region and what can be that trigger for the region as well as the Chinese invasion of Taiwan.
Sorry, but do you have anyone you want them to answer your question?
You have a fabulous panel full of different experts.
So you ask
and
everyone?
Basically, I'm sure each and every one of these experts can voice their opinion on these conflicts, which in Indo-Pacific region, sadly, are plentiful.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And also, by the way, welcome our Ukrainian friends here.
Thank you very much. We are most honored to be here.
All right, right now we have 3 questions. 2 directly has been directed to our very own Dr. Taniguchi. And the last one, I think they invite everyone on the podium to speak. So first, the 2 questions to Dr. Taniguchi, and then everyone, if you want to speak about Ukrainian friends' questions.
I think it will be a tall order for the Royal Australian Navy to come to rescue Taiwan in times of real contingency. The role to be played by the so-called middle powers in your term in peacetime is to continue to send a powerful signal to the Chinese that, as I said, fulfilling Xi Jinping's version of Chinese dream will cost a lot. And in that sense, the engagement of India and engagement of the UK and others will also be very much important. When it comes to further enriched collaboration between the Taiwanese military and Japanese self-defense forces, one thing that Taiwanese and Japanese share together is this US military presence. And when it comes to US military presence, the host nation's role, that is to say Japan's role, will be very much important. So together with the United States, I think Japan must start the kind of collaboration needed between the Taiwanese and Japanese, perhaps in a low-profile way. Be aware that in Japan, political landscape discourse daily has been under the increasing influence of the Chinese. An increasing number of business leaders voice that we must be more careful in dealing with the Chinese. So it takes a lot of political courage. Nonetheless, the Japanese must start thinking about that by taking advantage of the fact that the Japanese and Americans have been very close. Now, let me say a little bit about the flashpoints. Yes, there are many flashpoints. The fact that the hurdle for using military force has been lowered tremendously, I think has ignited such exchanges of hostilities that you see between Cambodia and Thailand. But for the entire world, the most important flashpoint is here. Don't just forget that Taiwan is the most important element when you think about the international order and the vast stretch of the Indo-Pacific region.
Thank you. And then probably I'll start with Gloria. You want to say something about a question? And Raja Mohan?
Just want to
a flashpoint.
Yeah, reinforce what Taniguchi-san was saying. It's really the principal flashpoint is here. Then you have Philippines and the Chinese border, maritime border. And we have the India-China Himalayan border, which is where actually the confrontations have been going on. So therefore, I think we shouldn't bring in every little incident. I mean, what happened between Thailand and Cambodia, I mean, it's not on Chinese frontier. So therefore, we've got to distinguish between different flashpoints. So I would say, could include Japan-China maritime border. So you have the East China Sea, the South China Sea, the Taiwan Strait, and the Himalayan border. These are the 4 theaters where it's not just being a flashpoint draws attention, but the Chinese salami tactics of constantly changing ground reality, even as recently in the last few weeks, a situation has changed in Philippines. So I think that is the real danger for those of us on China's periphery, and not just one single flashpoint. But for Taiwan, it's an existential question. But for others, there is a constant Chinese assertiveness that keeps altering the territorial status quo in violation of every single norm of international affairs.
And I agree. I think they'll calibrate their policy to avoid a flashpoint that would attract a kinetic response or American intervention, just through very carefully calibrated incremental aggression in the South China Sea and in this region. And it's what we call the frog in the pot syndrome, that people, we won't notice strategically that they're increasing aggression year after year, month after month and year after year. But if I just wanted to pick up on what our Ukrainian colleague has reminded us of, that what's going on in Ukraine is not just an abstract abstract and distant interest, pardon me, to Asia. Asia is involved in that war. North Korean soldiers are fighting on Ukrainian territory right now with Chinese and North Korean armaments. The Russian military has essentially totally expended its post-Soviet deposits of weapons. And yes, they've stood up a new war economy that's producing a lot of equipment. But they could not sustain the war in Ukraine without the logistical and munitions support that they're getting, enormous support from 2 Asian countries. So I think that it's time for NATO and Western countries to realize that Asia is involved, 2 Asian countries are involved in invading a peaceful European country right now, and that demands an appropriate response.
Thank you. My view is that actually 3 Asian countries involved. China provides everything, including the military hardware in Ukraine, on the war in Ukraine. So yes, China is not a single specter there. And then we have another round of questions. Please raise your hand if you like. Yeah, the first one here, and also there it will be another one. Okay, yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dominic Yang from the University of Missouri in the United States. I work in the history department. Great panel. I have a question for all the panelists. Now, maybe this issue will be discussed in the afternoon, but I would like to hear from every one of you if it's possible. Now, you guys talk about that there needs to be more collaboration amongst the maritime democracies. Now, the issue I'm talking about is actually domestic issue, social media, Chinese infiltration, because I think for me, that's the most important, because we're all democracies, and in comparison to an authoritarian regime, we have our particular vulnerability is really the power of that authoritarian regime to shape our public opinion. And for us to actually work together militarily and strategically on military front, we need the support of majority of our citizens. So my question is that, is there any talk about collaboration in terms of experience of how each and every country actually deal with this threat? I know, we all have different history, we all have different culture, and language-wise, the Chinese will influence us differently. I just want to hear from the panelists about this. So that's my question. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And then with the dignitaries here.
Thank you. I'm Anjanette. I'm the ambassador of the Republic of the Marshall Islands. It is truly a pleasure to be here this morning. And my question is to Dr. Tomahiko. And I want to get your thoughts on what you think the role, what your thoughts are on the trend that we're seeing in the Pacific with the increased influence of China and what that means in terms of security for the Indo-Pacific region. And perhaps the second question would be to everyone on the panel. What do you feel is the role of Pacific Island countries in this evolving security architecture in the Indo-Pacific region? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think that's also the question Taiwan would like to pose to our audience and the panelists. So who would like to go first? Gloria, do you like to? I think it's about the social media, interference campaign by China and how you're going to deal with it, if I do not understand it. Okay, I understand correctly? So.
Countries that has been barraged by all the disinformation. It's actually starting to be very, very daunting for the Filipinos to be reading through all the disinformation about our president, the first family, or even some in the legislature and the bureaucracy as well. In fact, Congress tried to legislate the issues of disinformation, but it's like fighting against a very informal group, but very powerful. So what we're currently doing is really to educate our people. Disinformation is something that is in our midst already. And as I said, the last election, the midterm election of the Philippines was one wherein disinformation was really massive. And that's why we came up with the conclusion that it's something that the digital space has been weaponized already on that note. We are doing a lot in terms of education in our country on how news should be carried in the airspace, but social media is one of the area that is so difficult to control. I think I'd love to hear from other similarly situated countries on how they are actually dealing with disinformation on social media. But it's something which is a concern right now. There's a joint research of different universities on the influence of the United Front in different parts of different sectors of the Philippines. We're looking at media, education, congressmen, senators, or even members of the bureaucracy. It's on process, but I'm not at liberty to discuss it at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, he just raised his hand.
Yeah.
So Ron, after Jason.
Okay. So I just wanted to underscore that in the G7, there is and has been for I think 5 years a rapid response mechanism on disinformation, which contacts of mine in the intelligence communities describe as actually being very effective. And there's also a working group within the Five Eyes, which is the intelligence platform of Canada, the United States, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand to deal with disinformation. So perhaps we need those well-resourced and sophisticated organizations to do more information sharing with like-minded countries. I can tell you in Canada, it's a very serious problem. I alluded to this earlier. In the 2022 Canadian federal election, we had there were probably something like 8 or 10 federal constituencies, districts, where the outcome was with very large ethnic Chinese, largely mainland Chinese populations, where the result was probably changed from one party to another because of massive PRC disinformation efforts. And some of it is so far under the radar screen, you can't really rebut it or block it. A lot of it is just running on WeChat. They would just release content on WeChat discussion groups that would just spread like wildfire with no sourced or credible information. And once it's out there being replicated over and over again, it's just about impossible to regulate. So this is something that I caution other countries to be very mindful of.
Briefly on the Pacific Island states, I think when we think of them as island states, it's very easy to forget these are very large ocean states, extraordinary, exclusive economic zones, and a whole range of areas to deal with. So when we talk about the big geopolitics, I think it's often easy to forget about the Pacific Island states. But I believe they're a critical node in the current contestation between US and China. China's reach has grown. If they can operate in Latin America, I don't see why they won't operate in the Pacific Islands. So I think the presence has grown. The response, I think, of the democracies has to be able to take the concerns of the Pacific Island states seriously. That now with the US aid is shut down. I think when we talked about coordination by Tomohiko-san, I think we need the region's middle powers to come together to respond to the developmental needs of the island states is one key priority. Second, I think, is the climate change and its impact on the resilience of these states. There, with Trump now pulling out of climate change again, we need to do more within the region on the question of climate change, on the question of resilience to deal with climate disasters. That I think should be a high priority for the regional powers.
Thank you. And Professor Taniguchi.
I think there must be a reward structure that would benefit those countries that maintain diplomatic relations with Taiwan in the Pacific, in the Caribbean, and so on. And that structure must be built by not only the United States, but also Japan and others, by the collaboration of those nations. And that reminds me of what the Japanese government has long done to put together, to invite all island nations, Pacific Island nations, to come to Japan for a regularized summit meeting. But I think now is the time for Japan to be more selective, distinguishing those nations that maintain ties with Taiwan from others. And this is the time when the all-encompassing ideas are being questioned. For instance, ASEAN centrality. That's an important mantra we still cherish. However, the reality is there are two ASEAN nations, one very much democratic and another very much falling under the influence of China. So it's a challenge for diplomats and political leaders as well, but let's just face it.
Thank you. Ambassador Chen, you would like to say something? Let me remind you, you're between us and lunch.
Okay, well, yeah, regarding the disinformation campaign, actually Taiwan, we are the biggest victim of China's disinformation campaign. And in the past few years, one very important progress we have is that we are now conducting a program called GCTF, Global Cooperation and Training Framework. It was the first sponsored by US, but right now I think Canada, Japan, and many other countries also get involved. And so we have different programs and invite other countries to come to Taiwan and to study and try to find appropriate strategies to fight against the disinformation campaign by China.
Thank you. Now we are just on time that about to conclude these sessions. So please join me, give a big applause of hands to the panelists on the audience for giving us a very insightful conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Many thanks to Dr. Lai for moderating this session. And I'd like to, on behalf of the host, express our sincere appreciation for all our panelists. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for lunch and special address. Please note that the next session, panel 2, will start at 2 p.m. this afternoon. For participants with a round sticker on your badge, please follow the staff in the back to the luncheon ballroom. And please remember to always keep your personal belongings and valuables with you. Thank you and see you later. Thank you.